Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Late Bloomers. I'm your host, Ria Ajane, and today's been a doozy, but I have a really cool guest today. I'm going to start off by reading his bio at first. So, Tony Hynes, Ph.D., was adopted by his parents, Mary and Janet, in the mid 1990s. He has been invited to be a speaker at conferences on adoption and foster care throughout the nation and has been passionate for speaking up for children and families touched by challenges in the adoption and foster care system. He writes about his experiences growing up as both an interracial adoptee and as a child growing up in an LGBTQ headed household in his memoir, The Son with Two Moms, which has been cited in the DC family court system to inform best practices. Tony's work and writing have been featured in The Atlantic, and he is a contributing author to books such as Adoption Unfiltered. Tony completed his master's thesis in sociology and psychology of children within a same sex headed household and completed his PhD at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. His dissertation focuses on social connectedness among adult interracial adoptees. As the training and content development specialist at CASE, Tony has designed innovative training curriculums that help families and professionals respond to evaluation and assessment tools that encapsulate holistic pictures of adoptees and foster youth. Without further ado, Tony, welcome to Late Bloomers.
Thank you so much for having me, Rhea. Pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a good day. It's really great weather here in Maryland, so I can't complain. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm expecting fall weather, but it's still kind of giving like summer, spring a little bit. My car kind of shut off on me today, so that was a doozy, but I'm gonna get it handled. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for asking.
No problem. I hope everything goes well. It's never fun to have that unexpected thing happen with cars. It's not fun.
No, I'm tired of it actually, but yeah, we'll get it taken care of. I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I remember interviewing you, was it 2020 for Case, I think. Was it for
Yeah.
Case or was it for a college assignment?
Oh, that's a good question. It might have been for a college assignment.
Okay, I think so too. I'm like trying to think back to my experiences at the same time. But yeah, I remember interviewing you and um I don't think you just released the book, but it was still kind of new around that time and I bought it and yeah, I think you just signed on to Case at that time too, right?
I
Yeah.
started case July of 2020. So yeah, it was that year for sure.
Whew, pandemic. How was that? How was that like starting at a new place during the pandemic?
It was awkward, extremely. So
Yeah.
I didn't even meet 95% of the staff in person at Case until like 2022, almost 2 years, actually more than 2 years after I started is when I actually met everyone in person. And so I met our CEO and some other people and saw some people around the office from time to time. But it was a big transition for me going into Case just generally being the training specialist here and then also having the pandemic to deal with. And Case did a lot of things in person that they then transitioned to doing virtually that I was now kind of taking the reins of as well. And so it was challenging, but it was a growth period for me. And I think it was some time that also proved itself useful from a professional standpoint too. So challenging, but that was, and that's an understatement for so many people, right, during that particular point in time.
Yeah, I feel like the whole world was in a crisis mode. So, yeah, definitely feel that. I brought you on to the show because I feel like through my work with Case and just people who are in my life, adoption has been very close to my heart. I know I have a friend, Alonzo, who I did an interview with a couple of months ago on his journey as an adoptee. And we kind of went through his process. But then I was like, I want to talk to Tony and I want people to hear your story because your experiences are a little different. So, is transracial adoption still a term or is it just interracial adoption? Like how are we referring to the experiences? of children who are placed who are different from their race?
Mhm. Great question. I think with so much related to adoption, this is another both and kind of situation where both terms are used now. It used to be transracial is the term that everybody's just using. Recently, the past 7, 8 years, interracial adoption has become a much more popular term. I go by interracial adoptee. I use interracial adoption. And I say that I do that for a few reasons. The first is because transracial adoption was a term that originated in the 70s from social workers, specifically white social workers and white adoptive parents, who envisioned this post racial society for children to grow up in. And so, transracial, the idea of we're transcending, not transitioning, but transcending this idea of race was consistent with that particular terminology. And then you saw colorblind rearing strategies that said, hey, love is enough. We're going to love our children. And race isn't something that matters. We don't see color in this family. And of course, now we know that that isn't best practice, that that isn't something that we should be doing. And so another term seemed way more fitting. And I learned throughout the course of my research that interracial adoption was actually used interchangeably in the past with transracial adoption. Actually, in the 80s and in the 90s, and then in the thousands, for whatever reason, it just switched to transracial. So when I found that out, I started using interracial. I started calling myself an interracial adoptee, but adoptees vary on that topic. Some people call themselves interracial adoptees. Some of us call ourselves transracial. Others call ourselves transnational adoptees for those adoptees who are adopted internationally. Some adoptees say culturally displaced adopted individuals to highlight their particular kind of personage. So it's really up to the adoptee as far as how they frame it. I use interracial adoption. I don't tell other people they have to, but that's what I go by.
Okay, for the purpose of this episode, we're just gonna use transracial. How about that? I mean, not transracial, interracial. What in the world? Could you share a bit about your upbringing and what inspired you to write The Son with Two Moms?
Sure. Yeah. So I was adopted when I was 5 years old, and I was placed into an orphanage when I was 3 years old. The reason why I was placed into an orphanage was because my birth mother happens to be schizophrenic, and she learned pretty early on in my life that she wasn't going to be able to care for me in the way that she wanted. So she, when I was 1 to 3 years old, would take me to the orphanage. Actually, a little bit earlier, 1 to 2 years old, would take me to the orphanage, and she would sometimes drop me off there and then come back and pick me up. And it was one of those days I'm told that she was told that, hey, you either need to leave Tony here in this orphanage or you need to take him home indefinitely, but you can't keep doing this back and forth, which is when she said, okay, well, he's going to stay in the orphanage with the idea in her mind, I think, that she was going to come back eventually. But it had been a few years, and then when I was around 3 years old, I was matched with a foster family, my two moms, Mary and Janet, and they fostered at that time. And then when I was 5, they adopted me. And this was a white lesbian couple that adopted this black child, this black boy. About 3 months after that adoption, my adoption, it was overturned by a panel of judges who had decided that a white same-sex household wasn't the right household to raise a black child in. Yeah, right. And so that decision was appealed. It was appealed actually all the way up to the Supreme Court before it was knocked down to the lower courts, who decided upon a joint custody agreement between my birth family and my adoptive family, which meant for me that technically I was a ward of the state, and that meant that I had legal guardians, but not adoptive parents. And my legal guardians were both my birth family and also my adoptive family. So I grew up not really having this knowledge, just knowing that, or feeling that I was an adoptee and I was an interracial adoptee, and there was a lot of complexity to that. And fast forward to my book. So I was actually cleaning my mom's house one day, and my moms, they always made sure that I was kind of aware that I was going to be able to to receive, love and all that good stuff. But one of my moms got sick when I was 7 years old with cancer, one of my adoptive moms, and she ended up dying from cancer when I was 12 years old. And so it was a big grief process for me, a big grieving process, and one that I hadn't really talked about a lot. And so I was cleaning my other mom's, I was cleaning her house one day and I found this journal, and it was my mother, Mary, my other mom who had died. It was her journal. And in this journal, she had wrote about her first chemotherapy treatments and how she was feeling at the time and what it meant to her and how she was feeling about being a mom, how she was feeling about being a partner to Janet. And I just felt this wealth of emotions at that time. And that's when I started to write. And I had 1 page and I had 2 pages, and eventually I had, 20 pages, and then it turned into a book. That's part of the process for that first book.
I think that that's every time I hear you say, like, your case was brought up to the Supreme Court, I'm just like, was nobody thinking about how the child might feel during this process? Or the biases against same-sex marriages, because it's like, it's not uncommon for white families to adopt outside of their race. But I feel like the fact that they were LGBTQ, that added on to it. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so the social worker in my case, she was actually working against our family. So
Mm,
she was working for us, but she was saying to my birth family, this is what you need to do when you file this appeal. This is how you get custody of Tony. We don't want Tony to be raised by this family because he won't know what it is to be a man if he's raised by two women, and specifically two lesbian women, and maybe he'll be gay himself. And oh my gosh, that would be so bad, right? And so we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. And the judges in my case, I think they felt similarly. I don't know for sure, but I think they felt similarly that this white household, but yes, also this LGBTQ plus headed household was not the right household. I will say that I do feel race had a big part in their decision-making process too, because I was adopted from DC, which is different, especially around that time, from the rest of the country. DC back then was not only called Chocolate City, it actually was Chocolate City back then. Now it's just called Chocolate City, but it isn't really Chocolate City anymore. But
yeah.
in the 90s, it actually was. And so in social work and in adoption and in family court, when you
Uh-huh.
had a black child, they were typically matched with a black family when possible. And the judges wanted that to happen in this case. They wanted me to be raised by a same race family. They had seen some of the damage that interracial adoption had done to kids who look like me, to black children, kids raised in predominantly white spaces who experience racism and don't have people around them to support them, experiencing family racism in their adoptive families, were all
Mhm.
things that I know that they had seen. So I do think that that played a role in their decision making, but I also think their prejudice for gay people also played a role in that decision making process. And my adoption happened before same-sex marriage was legalized in
Yeah.
this country, and it happened at a time where two women, two men weren't allowed to adopt. You had to adopt as a single parent, and then the other person becomes a legal guardian, but only one of them can be an adoptive parent because of the prejudice in our law during that particular time. A prejudice that still exists in our law in certain states in this country. But that was, I think that had both of those things had a lot
Yeah.
to do with their decision.
A both and situation. You said that your work has been cited in the DC Families Court system, which is incredible, by the way. How do you feel to see your personal story being used to inform real policy and practice?
I feel good. I feel good. It's kind of surreal at the same time. I was interacting with the head of an adoption agency recently, and she was just saying that I remember your case. She was saying, I was a lawyer in DC during this time, and your case was the talk of the town, she was saying. And it did this, it did that. And when I hear things like that, it makes me feel like my family's story made a difference. And it's also a reminder of still how far we have to go, because some of the same things that were present during that time, as far as the prejudice against gay families, the non understanding of how to support interracial adoptive families and birth families, and to do family preservation. All of those things are still present. But I'm glad that my case could serve as kind of a wake up call to some people, and to see that, these families, they do deserve to exist, and the best interests of the child also really need to be taken into account when you're doing these things.
Agreed, agreed. How did the intersections of being Black and an interracial adoption and having two LGBTQIA parents shape your sense of identity?
Shaped it a lot. I think that one, being black is so important to me. I was asked not the other day, I was asked the other year in this adoptee group that I was in, and we were going around and they asked us to say what identity status we identify with first. Is it man, woman, adoptee, black, white, Asian? What identity status do we have first? And this was a group of interracial adoptees in this group. And in the group, I said that, well, I identify first and foremost as black, and then as a black male, and then after that as an interracial adoptee. And in the group, someone then shared, well, that's interesting that you don't identify as an adoptee first. I'm really comfortable just telling people that I'm adopted. If I'm talking to someone at a bar, they were saying, I just feel comfortable saying, like, I'm an adoptee, I'm adopted, and I'm an interracial adoptee, and there are transnational adoptees. So I'm a transnational adoptee. And I didn't push back, but then I thought about it later on, and I was like, that's interesting. I think that one, because that person wasn't black, I think that their experience in the world is different than my experience in the world for so many different reasons. And the first thing that people notice about me isn't that I'm an interracial adoptee, or even that I have gay parents. It's that I'm black and that I'm a black male. That's the first thing people notice. I don't go out of my way to be like, hey, look at me, I'm black, I'm a black male. Like, this is
Right.
no, this is society. Societally, this is how you have noticed me. And so for that reason, I identify with that first, because of how society is formulated, that I'm proud to be black. I'm proud of blackness. But if I was interacting with a childhood friend, this is years ago, and I was at his engagement party, and my group of friends are not predominantly white, but his group of friends are predominantly white. So I
Mm,
walked in to his engagement party, and I was I think the only black face at the
mm,
time. Definitely the only black male face, I should say. Maybe there were black women there. I think I was the only black male face.
mhm.
And so I walk in, and I hadn't seen him in probably 6 or 7 years at this point in time. And he looks at me and he says, hey, and this is in front of like 30, 40 people. You look just like Luke Cage. And yeah, exactly. If you've seen Luke Cage, it's a Netflix superhero character,
Marvel.
Marvel, right? And I don't look anything like Luke Cage, right? We don't have the same skin tone. We're different body
He's
shapes.
bald.
Bald, yeah, like, I'm not bald. I wasn't bald then either. We don't look anything alike. But even the fact that he noticed and wanted to point out race to me right away, when I hadn't even seen him in years, that was the first thing he wanted to point out and go to. And that happens to black people, I feel like, a lot, and people of color a lot. Yes. So that's one point. And then the other point, though, that I was thinking about with her comment with relation to your question is that, well, when you share you're an interracial adoptee, when I've shared it, I'm sure when she has shared it, you usually just get oh, it's really interesting. Oh, cool. Or, wow, I wish I was adopted. Sometimes you might get how was that? When you share that you have lesbian or gay parents, that is not the typical response that you receive. Sometimes you get that's, oh, that's interesting. Other times you get oh, that's interesting. Right. So there's that voice inflection point there that lets you know you are not in a space that is going to be completely comfortable for you moving forward. And so
Mm,
you sharing that information is something you have to be more careful about than you sharing the information about being an interracial adoptee, because you might be in a scenario where you share with someone, "Hey, I was raised by gay parents," and they say back to you, "Oh, well, your parents are going to hell. Never going to happen." And
mhm,
that has happened to me. Right? So that's never happened to me with regard to my parents being interracial adoptees. And so when I
right.
say I don't define myself as an adoptee first and foremost, it isn't because I don't feel that that's a big part of my identity. It's because I know that I have to be careful and I have to pick and choose sometimes about who I'm sharing this information with. And so sometimes other identity statuses take precedent for me in conversation, in my personage, and in how I'm sharing about my experiences too. So even amongst adoptees, there's this intersectionality that exists. And so I always had to be aware, as you and I have said, of the both and of being Black and trying to feel more racially authentic.
Mhm.
And I did that through cultivating peer interactions and relationships. I remember we had a conversation about that last time we spoke. And so that was something that was really important to me, but that I had to kind of cultivate when I was in my teens. And when it came to being an adoptee of same sex parents, that is something that I had to be more comfortable talking about and sharing really in my college years. And I had to realize for myself that I needed to be intentional about who I surrounded myself with, and that those people needed to be not only okay, but accepting of my family's background, not just the interracial piece, but also the LGBTQA plus headed piece too. And that was really going to be impactful for my identity moving forward.
Yeah, I remember us talking about Black Panther specifically is, like, the one example that's coming up for me, and when Chadwick had passed away, you were having 2 split experiences. You were having your experiences, like, as Tony, as who you are, and then I remember you explaining to your mom, one of your moms, of, like, "Hey, Chadwick passed away," and she was like it wasn't like she wasn't it was like, "Oh, that's sad," but she wasn't feeling, like, this sadness that a lot of us felt at that time, and I think people may see the impact of Black Panther, but I feel like you unless you're, like, in the community, you don't understand, like, the deepness of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like, that is an experience that is very unique to, interracial adoptees. It's like you go through an experience as yourself, and then you have your white parent over here where it's like, "Hey, this is going on, kinda need some support in this area." Um, and yeah, I felt like that was very interesting that you shared that story. Do you mind talking about it again?
Not at all. So the story you're referencing is when Chadwick Boseman, star of Black Panther, it died. It was a really heavy time for a lot of us and especially Black people, because I'm sure as our listeners probably already understand, Black Panther wasn't just a movie, it was a
Mhm.
representation of Blackness that we typically hadn't seen in Hollywood. And if we had seen it, we had not seen it be that successful in that box office. And so Chadwick became this transformational figure and role model for so many kids out there, so many adults out there. And so his sudden passing to us, to the public, was jarring. And it didn't just feel like the typical celebrity death that, you might not feel a connection to that celebrity, even though you feel it's sad. A lot of us felt a deep connection and still do feel a deep connection to Chadwick Boseman. And so it hit Black people, a lot of Black people, not we're not a monolith, but it hit a lot of us really hard, including myself. And I remember I wasn't really looking for empathy from my mom necessarily. I was just sharing that he had died. And I will say my mom is not up on pop culture generally anyway, but the way that she responded, yes, it was that's unfortunate or something like that. And in that moment, you just realize that things mean different things to you versus your own parent.
Yeah.
As someone who's an interracial adoptee who loves your white parent, you love your parent. Well, I love my parent, but I also realize that there are some things that she just doesn't understand about who I am, and that
Yeah.
she just will never be able to understand about who I am because of her experiences in the world and my experiences in the world as a Black person. Sometimes we're just okay with accepting that. And other times, as I tell parents, it's really important that even if you don't have that shared experience, that you learn more as much as you can rather about that experience. So in those moments, you can have more empathy than my mom was able to have in that moment. So even though you might not know exactly how I'm feeling, maybe you feel, oh my gosh, how are you feeling? That must be so sad for you. So it's acknowledging that I'm not feeling the same thing that you were feeling, but I acknowledge that you are feeling something really heavy and I want to sit in that with you in this moment. And that's something that has been really hard for, I think, trainers, parents to
Mhm.
understand. And because of that, a lot of interracial adoptees feel very lonely, not only in childhood, but in adulthood, because I wasn't 8 when Chadwick died,
Right.
right? So I was a grown man, and still as a grown adult, you still want your parents' support. You still want their empathy, but a lot of us as interracial adoptees aren't getting that. And as a result of that, we're disconnecting from our adoptive parents in adulthood and moving to other places where we feel more wanted, more protected, greater senses of belonging.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for asking.
Of course. When you look back on your childhood now, what moments or lessons stand out to you as particularly formative?
There's a lot. So I think one of the moments that definitely stands out to me is the court case itself.
Yeah.
Because in my court case, when I was 7, they actually asked me what family I would prefer to live with. And I said that I would prefer to live with Mary and Janet, my 2 moms, because it was the only home I had ever known. Meaning, not in a literal sense, but in a experience sense as a 7-year-old, that's how my 7-year-old self felt. And I think even at that age, I understood enough about schizophrenia to know that it was going to be difficult for my birth mom to care for me. I remember going to my grandmother's home when I was a child, and this is during the custody battle. And my birth mom was there, and my birth mom, in front of my grandmom, she asked me the same question. She said, which family would you prefer to live with? Do you want to live with me or do you want to live with them? And I said, Mom, and I started, I want to live with them. And then she started crying in that moment. And then my grandmother said, look what you've done to your mother. Look what you've done to your mother. And I just remember feeling this wave of guilt and sadness. And I told my mom, I love you. I always love you. I'm sorry. And she didn't say anything. She was just crying. And so that memory still sticks out to me as extremely formative and just reminds me of the challenges of my experience, but also the challenges that the system that life creates for children. I shouldn't have had to make that decision at such an early age. And at the same time, I am glad that I was at least asked which family I would prefer to live with. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't feel that I should have had to,
Yeah.
and I feel that at least in my particular case, I had some agency that 99.9% of children are not given in their cases. And so that's one kind of formative experience. And then just a reminder to me of how early I had to grow up. I was experiencing kind of these adult situations, my mom getting cancer, having to decide what family I was going to live with, seeing seeing all of that, seeing adults argue about custody, experiencing adoption. So these things set me out from my peers and aged me in a way that I think was different. And so I remember adults when I was younger always saying that I seemed older than my years. And I think that was because I had been forced to make these adult decisions. Another formative experience that I had growing up was also my mother, Mary. dying of cancer, not just getting cancer, but dying of cancer when I
Yeah.
was 12. And for so many reasons. One reason being that we went from being a same-sex headed household, LGBTQ plus headed household that had two lesbian parents to now there was only one white mom who was a lesbian who was raising me. And what that meant was that there weren't two women picking me up from school anymore. And the kids weren't asking me questions about, well, why do you have two? Who are those? I didn't have to be out anymore as an adoptee of same sex LGBTQ plus headed parents. And so I started to cover that part of my identity. My mom died the summer before middle school. I was going to a new middle school. So none of those kids knew me. So I was able to not talk about my family really. And people just assumed whatever they wanted to assume, but they didn't assume that I had gay parents. And because of that, people felt way more comfortable, I think, than maybe they would have voicing homophobic, verbiage and thoughts sometimes in front of me. And so in those moments, I would have to make decisions about, okay, do I say something to them? Do I tell them that I don't like this comment? But if I tell them that I don't like this comment, then they're going to ask me why. And then I'll have to say, well, it's because I have gay parents. And then maybe they won't want to be as cool with me because maybe they'll be afraid that they can't talk openly in front of me anymore. Then I want to fit in and I don't have friends
Right.
and at this school. And so what do I do? So I often wouldn't say anything, but then I would go home and I would have conversations with Mary and I would talk to her and I would say, sorry, because I didn't feel that I had protected her, protected my family in the way that I should have. And so in addition to the grief that I was feeling at that time, that really set the stage. You asked about my book. Like, I think that really, her death really set the stage for me writing about how it felt to be adopted into this specific family type and to talk about that and how I came to talk about that. So I think those couple of experiences really stuck with me. There's some others that are racialized experiences too that have to do with racism I experienced growing up. From when we talk about racism a lot, it's usually white people being racist to black people usually is what people describe. And I definitely experienced that for sure.
Mhm.
But the first time I was called the N-word was actually by a Latino person when I was playing soccer. And it was a reminder for me that even amongst other minority groups that people look down on you for being black. And so where are your affinity groups? And so for me, that was one of those experiences where I was like, okay, well, I know that maybe the only affinity groups that I can exist in that are just naturally for me are other black people. But then I realized, okay, well, they're not adoptees that are black people necessarily. And they're often not people that are coming from the foster care system either. Where's my affinity group? Where can I feel comfortable? It ended up being that I felt comfortable around anybody with good conversations, similar interests who could empathize with my experiences, and they didn't have to be adoptees or have to be black, but that I valued people who understood what their personage was too. And so I think all of those experiences helped kind of shape my identity and help shape where I was going to go in my personal research and also my professional life.
How did your moms make you feel, like, comfortable and made sure that you were also getting kind of like your Black history, your, like, cultural understanding and background? Like, what were some things that they implemented in the home to make sure that you felt comfortable and safe?
Well, I think that comfortable and safe might be a stretch
Okay.
for my family
Okay.
because I think that they did a really good job of instilling Black history into my experience. They changed my name symbolically to, and I'm not saying this was a great thing, and the name changing is controversial and not a good thing in my opinion. But they changed my name to Martin, my middle name to Martin, after Martin Luther King. And I mention that because they wanted to be intentional about They didn't necessarily go about it in the right way there, but they wanted to be intentional about me knowing that there were these strong Black historical figures who fought for civil rights. And so I learned not only about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, but also Medgar Evers and Ralph Abernathy and Fannie Lou Hamer. And I had these VHS tapes of a series called Eyes on the Prize that my mom gave to me to watch, which was a documentary series on the civil rights movement that covered from the 50s through the 80s, the Black civil rights movement in the US, and I loved that series, and I still do. My mom Janet was at Christmas time, she would always give me books, and the books were almost always, 2 or 3 of them were biography. Jackie Robinson biography here, Medgar Evers here, Malcolm X here, and so I was reading a lot of books about Black people when I was growing up. I had a Negro Leagues baseball hat growing up because my mother Janet had bought me a Negro Leagues baseball hat too. And so I knew from a really young age the power of Blackness and the strength of Blackness. And so that made me feel good about being Black. Racial adoptees don't feel good about being Black because they're getting a lot of negative messages about Black people, not only from society, but sometimes from their own adoptive families themselves. It wasn't really like that in my case. And so that made me feel good. And it also gave me knowledge. I didn't have the cultural knowledge though, still. That sometimes was uncomfortable for me. Like I didn't always talk about this story of meeting a good friend of mine now, and I was playing basketball with him and his friends at the time when I was 14, and he comes up to me to give me a dap, my handshake, and yeah, I don't know what I did with my hands, but it led him to be like, "What the hell is that? What is that?
Yeah,
What are you doing?" Like, and I was like, "I don't."
like
Yeah, I don't know what I did. I just said, "I don't know, man." I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing either. I don't know." He was like, "No."
right,
He was like, "No, this is how you, no, not like that, like this, no, like this." And we did that like 4 or more times, I don't know, an embarrassing amount of times, but eventually I got it down. And so though there were some things like hair care I had to learn myself
right.
that my parents either didn't know how to do, were unwilling to do, or where they had some bias themselves in some areas that led them to not be able to support me in certain ways and frames. And so I realized that yes, I had the historical knowledge,
Mhm.
but that didn't mean that my parents couldn't say problematic things racially. That didn't mean that even though they supported me when I was accused of stealing and held that restaurant accountable, right? If I'm accused of stealing from a restaurant, which happened with a couple of times, and that was great. It didn't mean that they couldn't do things that were problematic in other areas. And that was something that I had to kind of hold as an adoptee. So I feel that given the time that my experience was more racially conscious than a lot of other adoptees, but that didn't mean that I felt one with my body all the time.
Gotcha. Shout out to your friend for not, like, embarrassing you, like, actually teaching you. I feel like I would do something like this. I'd be like, "No, this is how you do it." Like, yeah.
Exactly.
And then you're, like, running through the scenarios and practicing, or be like, "You walk from over there, I walk from over there, and let's practice." Like, that was are you still friends with that person to this day?
Yeah, he's one of my best friends. He's one of my best friends to this day. I talk to him every day. Yeah, shout out to him. Shout out to him
Shout
for
out to
sure.
him. Let's see. Ooh, I think I need to get some glasses. In terms of adoption, specifically transracial adoption, from your perspective, what has improved? And I guess you already touched on what still needs work, around like supporting families, but what have you seen that has improved?
I think what has improved is the acknowledgement that colorblind rearing strategies are not best practice. So this idea that we're just going to love this child and we don't see race. Most people that are in the adoption professional space, at least, don't feel that we should be doing that and know that we need to have cultural competency when it comes to this practice. So that's good. We know that we should be honoring birth family and that means that we don't do closed adoptions as
Mhm.
much anymore. That's not really best. They used to be best practice in adoption, not only interracial adoption, but adoption as a whole. It used to be that adoption is the secret and we don't tell anybody and we're just going to do this and birth family is not going to be able to have any contact with the adopted person. We also now know with interracial adoption that it's really important for adult interracial adoptees to be able to tell their story and to share their experiences. And so interracial adoptees are given platforms that didn't exist for us before at conferences, at organizations, as far as, professional opportunities that we have now that we didn't have in the past. So those are some positive things that have happened, or I should say improvements that I feel have been made with regard to adoption. There's a bigger movement for family preservation in general. So that means that more same race families are staying together than previously existed in some
Right.
cases. But we still have a rise in interracial adoptions over the last 20,
Mm.
and that's in domestic interracial adoption specifically. And we still have places where, even though there's a belief that colorblind rearing isn't a good thing, the law of the land, the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act, stipulates that adoption agencies, legally, they're not allowed to train prospective parents about race and culture in order to have them be able to become adoptive parents. They can't say, in order for you to be able to be eligible to be an adoptive parent, you have to take this race-based class. They can do that at their organization, but the law stipulates that they're not supposed to do that. And so some adoption agencies do that, but they call it something different.
Right.
And other agencies don't do it at all. And it means that so many parents aren't getting any education about how to properly support interracial adoptees. So kids are still growing up in predominantly white spaces. And once in a blue moon, I'll do a training on interracial adoption and someone will come up to me and they'll say, "How come you talk so much about white families and interracial adoption? What about black families who adopt interracially?" And I say, well, black families do adopt and they do adopt interracially. Black families have been systemically discriminated against societally, generally. And that also relates to adoption kept out of the adoption space formally. So when people say, oh, black people love to adopt informally, it's not that black people love to adopt informally. It's that black people, when we tried to adopt formally, we were told that we weren't qualified, that we didn't have this, we didn't have that they just weren't going to match us to eligible children that were going to be placed for adoption. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to find another way for kids in our communities to have homes. But even when you look at adoption rates, you see that single black women are actually the most likely demographic to adopt from foster care. So it isn't even that when it comes to formal adoption that that's the practice in place. But when you think about, interracial adoption, you still have places that don't understand that 75% of interracial adoptive parents are white parents. 90% of the international adoptions that are done by white parents. So that's why we focus so much on talking about white parents specifically who are adopting interracially. Even though there are families of color who do adopt interracially, those white families are typically raising their kids in areas that are even more white than white non-adoptees are raised in. So I'll
Mhm.
say that again. Interracial adoptive parents are raising children of color in more predominantly white spaces than white parents of non-adopted white children. And so what that means is that these kids are not getting those racial mirrors. These kids are not being able to experience having kids that look like them. These kids are getting asked awkward questions all the time about why do you look different? These kids are experiencing so much racism in their environments, and a lot of places still won't acknowledge that this is going on. And that includes a lot of adoption agencies and adoption adjacent places. And that just contributes to the problem. And we don't address historically the racism that's been inherent in the creation and the practice of interracial adoption in the United States, which is really unfortunate because it means that a lot of kids aren't served, but it also means that we're not addressing this evil of racism in our society as it has related to this specific subject and topic and practice.
I just I think about TV movies that you see where it's like you have a black child who has like the white family and they're in like the nice neighborhood, the suburbs or like a gated community as connected to their culture or to their history. And so I guess to like respond to that, some of them are like very like anti being like other. And I think my heart not I think, my heart does break for people who go through those experiences because you didn't it's like you didn't have a chance to kinda see what else is out there, in terms of, like, your culture or, like, meeting other people in other communities, like, you are just in this one space where it's predominantly white, and you have to learn how to navigate that. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right about
Yeah,
that. It is an experience that they have to go through that. And I think a lot of people might respond to that and they might say that, well, what is the alternative? Having these kids languish in foster care or having them grow up in these abusive, households, these birth family households. Their birth families are so bad this and so bad that. And people also don't understand that when it comes to abuse in adoptive households versus birth family households, non-adoptive households, the rates are actually similar. So
uh,
there isn't more abuse that's happening statistically in birth homes than there are in adoptive homes. And when I did my study, when I interviewed adult interracial adoptees, there were a number of adoptees who described being physically and sexually abused in
uh,
their adoptive families by their adoptive families. And so this notion that they're going to quote better homes and better places just isn't the case. They're
uh,
going to different homes, different places, and sometimes those places are overall places of good for them and other times not so much.
yeah,
And when it comes to interracial adoption, they're sometimes being abused physically and also emotionally, and they're not receiving, as you said, that cultural belonging that their bodies are so seeking while they're being separated from their birth families. It's not easy being separated from people that you love. And all adoptees, we get separated from people that we love, people that we feel connected to. And so to tell us that we should feel grateful for those experiences while we're also experiencing racism in our communities isn't something that I think people understand is not a good thing to say because they're seeing a quote better school or a more high income area that a child is living in than they would have lived in. And they're saying, oh, well, they have a better life, quote, because of that. Well, if that were true, you wouldn't see suicidality rates that you see amongst adopted persons. And I'm not talking suicidality amongst 12-year-olds. I'm talking about suicidality rates among 30 and 40-year-olds who've grown up from birth a lot of times after birth being adopted and feel depressed to the point where they want to take their own life
yeah.
because they have searched for belonging their entire lives and they've not received it.
I see. I just need to take a deep breath with that one. Right. Let's see, because I feel like we've like touched on a lot of this. There was something that I wanted to ask you about in terms of your development through like, your teen years or preteen and how I was navigating that process. But I think you kind of explained it really well with, you met your friend who you're still best friends with to this day, who like showed you the ropes.
Yeah, yeah. He was not shy.
Oh, well, clearly not. If he was like, we need to get this together right now. Can you think of, like, any other moments throughout that time period that kinda helped you understand the cultural context of, our experience here? in America, I guess I should say.
I think when it comes to Black people, listening to I'm a music head, so I love music,
Mhm,
and music was a gateway for me to be able to connect with more people of all races and all personalities, and also to understand more about Blackness and more about Black Americans, Black American culture. And Mary, one of my moms, she actually listened to a lot of Motown music when I was growing up, and so she would play Motown music for me. I learned early on that I like this Motown music. This sounds really good, and that these songs are coinciding with a movement that's going on at the same time that they're singing these happy songs. And so I learned about that, but then I also learned about protest music at the same time, and I
mhm,
learned about Negro spirituals the same time. So I learned that the Black church was a form of protest in this country, that that's how Black churches originated, as literally as a form of protest and as a form of organization, as a form of resistance against slavery. And I thought that that was so strategic and smart. And so when people talk about, why are so many Black people Christians, for example? Well, that also dates back to being enslaved in this country and resisting that enslavement through this particular process and religion and seeing it differently than others had seen it. And so I began to see the connections between what I'm seeing if I go to church with my grandmother's family to their Baptist church and to gospel music and even to R&B music, because a lot of R&B artists were in the choir and then became R&B singers after that. And so those things were helpful to me, again, in that pride building kind of exercise, if you will, and having friends who I could see were representations of all different types of personalities and people. I think seeing that being Black is not a monolith, and also understanding for myself that I didn't have to fit into a particular box and that none of us do. And I could like Harry Potter if I wanted to, which I did, and I do. I can like Kendrick Lamar and then also listen to an old Matchbox 20, I'm dating myself, song that I grew up listening to it in some way. And it doesn't make me less Black in any way. And so I think as I got more comfortable being able to do adapt, right? But also knowing that I liked Harry Potter and these other things, which some people would say is not as Black as other things, as Black Panther is, for example,
right.
that allowed me to see that, yeah, I can do the both and too when it comes to my identity. And I'm an interracial adoptee. So if I like what my adoptive parents like, then that's cool too. Like it's okay to like some stuff that my adoptive parents like that might not fit the aesthetic from family types that are non-adoptive, non-white families, right? And so I think kind of integrating all of those things, all of those structures into who I am now makes me feel really comfortable about the person I am. And it didn't happen overnight. It took time, but I feel really comfortable.
Yeah, I like that you said that because I don't know if it's, specific to interracial adoptees or just as experience as, Black people, if we like something that's outside of the of our norm, even though we're very vast people, so I don't know why we place that on ourselves. But yeah, some people feel like, "Oh, if I don't do this or if I don't watch this TV show, I'm not Black." It's like, listen, people will talk about good times till the cows come home. I thought it was depressing watching Good Times, no shade. I too love Harry Potter. By the way, which house are you in?
I am in Gryffindor specifically. I have what, are you Slytherin? You
Yes,
Ravenclaw? You Slytherin?
exactly that.
Oh man, that's cool. That's cool.
I was shocked at first, and then I was like, "Okay."
You're not where you do you wear green that often though? I feel like I don't see you I'm
Green
not sure
is
I see
my
you with
favorite
that.
color.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Even though, like, I think I'm starting to get into pink now, or just, like, I feel like I always worn bright colors, yellow and stuff like that, but green is, like, my favorite color.
Makes so much
So, yeah,
sense.
I remember years ago, I took the test, and I was like, "Wait, really?" Because I just thought I was gonna be Gryffindor or, like, Ravenclaw or something. But then I was like, "You know what? Sirius Black is in Slytherin, so"
That's
you
true.
know what I mean?
That is true. You're
Gang, gang.
powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Slytherin, yeah, you're definitely powerful and strategic, smart, intelligent, so stylish. So those are all Slytherin characteristics. So it does make sense. It does.
Yeah.
It may I
But
gotta
I was like
side eye you a little bit, but it
I
does make
know, right?
sense.
I was like, "Is your soul dark? Like, what do you got going on?"
Are you a dark soul as well? Like, we
Do you have a dark I do love horror movies.
see? See, there you go.
I wouldn't say I
You
would have
don't
dark
like
soul.
them. You don't like them, you love them.
I
So that's
do. It's my favorite genre, and I know some people would be shocked because I don't seem like I'm into horror movies, I guess just how I present, but yeah, I mean, I could watch a whole marathon of horror in a day. Um,
what is your favorite
say that again?
horror? What's one of your favorite horror movies?
See, I'm a Libra, so I don't like so let me stop. I think I really like the Scream franchise. I know it gets a lot of flack, but I think it's a fun time. I recently saw Weapons, and I enjoyed myself. Did you see that?
I've not seen that, no.
You probably don't watch horror movies. It's okay. It's, like, scary at first, but then it, like, you don't have to watch Disney Channel after. It's
Okay, okay.
or anything happy because of how it ends. It's like the same people who made, Barbarian. So if you've seen Barbarian, all those you probably didn't. Okay. Well, next.
I'm not you were right, I don't watch a lot of horror movies, but I have seen the Scream, and not all of them, but I've seen a few different Scream movies.
A good
I've
number.
seen yeah, I don't know if Final Destination counts
Yes,
as
I
horror.
just saw the new one too. I actually liked it.
Good.
It was
I
giving
haven't s
CW, but,
oh, that's interesting.
yeah. Did you watch
Saw
it?
I didn't watch it, like, I've
Oh,
seen 3, 4, I've seen 4 of the Saw movies, and
okay.
so I do like
I
the
like
Saw
Saw too.
franchise. I feel like the first one especially was really, really good,
Yeah.
the first Saw. So, like, if there are classics that are horror movies, like, I've probably seen some, but you're right, like, as a Gryffindor, I prefer to focus on, bravery and courage and not and sometimes fighting the darkness instead of existing in it and being with it, So, not
So
saying like I'm a better person, but I'm just saying like, I'm just saying.
so you seen, not The Runaways, Avengers 2. Well, not The Rejects. That's not nice. What is it called?
I know who you're talking about though. The one that nobody likes, right? The movie that people said wasn't good.
I enjoyed myself.
Okay,
And I
good. I have
it
not
just
seen that though. But I only
okay,
didn't watch it because people were saying it was bad. I was planning to, and then people were like, "Oh, this is trash." And I was like,
no,
I'll wait. I'll wait till it comes out on something." And then I just
that's
never
fair.
got to it.
It's on streaming platforms now. So if you get a chance, I think you'll like that because that's very power of friendship. It gives, like there's there's, like, a undertone of, like, "I was depressed, and now I have my friends, and now we're together."
That's
I know
nice.
it sounds corny the way I'm describing it, but you'll have a good time.
That's cool. It sounds almost like, in a way, the K-pop Demon Hunters
Oh.
movie is a way.
My niece is into the K-pop Demon Hunters, and I've never seen the movie, but anytime I'm on FaceTime with her, she's playing that album, okay? On repeat.
I get it. It's a catchy album. I mean, the
Oh, it's
songs are
nice. It's like I was like, "Oh, I didn't know
it's
they
a
was getting
lot.
down like this. Okay.
It's like yeah. I recommend that movie. I do. I watched it because there's actually an adoption story in the movie, and
Okay.
someone who is in a training that I do kept talking about it, and I'd already heard about it. I was like, "All right, I mean, I'll check it out. It'll
Mhm.
be all right." But I was like, "Oh, this is." I liked it a lot more than I
You
thought
like,
I
"This
was
is
going.
like that, actually."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and the songs are still stuck in my head, so I understand why she's listening to it on repeat. But I have heard that kids are just, spamming people with the album, with the movie, and forcing their parents to make them show them the movie like 8 times and stuff like that, which would be a little challenging for me, but I feel it.
You said not a little challenging. Sorry for the sidetrack, but I'm glad we Um,
Slithered in.
slithered in and slithered out, it's my style, okay? What unique strengths do LGBTQ plus families bring to the adoption and foster care space? Not the sip.
Yeah, I had decided to have a little bit of wine for our convo. I don't think
Okay.
any. I don't think LGBTQ people have any unique strengths when it comes to adopting. And I would say the same thing for Black parents. I'd say the same thing for Asian parents. Just because you're a minority group or a marginalized group doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be a better adoptive parent than another group of people. An example of that was shown recently. There's this woman named Jillian Michaels who used to be like, yeah, so you've heard the name. So she used to be on, for listeners, if you haven't heard her name, she was on this show called The Biggest Loser, which was a huge show in the early thousands. She's a fitness influencer and she's a white adoptive parent of a Black child from Haiti. Her and her wife adopted their daughter from Haiti. And so recently she was talking about slavery and racism in the United States. And she was saying that everybody did slavery globally, that it isn't something that is just a United States thing. But we're the ones who ended slavery, right? We're the ones who put a stop to it. And well, I mean, first of all, it was half the country, not the entire country, right? Who put a stop to it. And the other half continued to not only fight for it, but kill because it wasn't instituted. And then we had Jim Crow laws after that. And so even the other half was still, complicit in. So we know that. We don't need to talk about how slavery in the United States was bad. And obviously chattel slavery, way, way different and harsher than some forms of indentured servitude that
Indenture service, yeah.
was going on in Ireland, for instance. So we know that. So that's problematic that she's a white parent with a Black child saying that. She also said years before that, she said, when asked about her motivation to adopt, she said, I knew I had this gift of citizenship that I could give to a child. And so I wanted to give that gift of American citizenship to a child in need. And so I'm so glad that we were able to do that. So imagine being her daughter and having to live with someone who has that particular mindset, that saviorist mindset. So yes, she's also someone, Jillian Michaels, who celebrated marriage equality and fought for civil rights of LGBTQA plus populations. But you can clearly see that when it comes to adoption and interracial adoption specifically, not only does she have a lot to learn, but she has said racist things that are now very likely, I know, impacting her Black child in ways that are harmful and traumatizing for that child. And so I have seen that, yes, there are things that are touted as being better, quote, for adoption. But I've
Yeah.
seen in practice that so often that is not the case. I want parents who, no matter what your background is, you're willing to dig in the mud and learn all that you can about adoption, foster care, birth families, grief loss, ambiguous loss, how to properly support us as adopted persons.
Thank you. Snaps across the board. Yeah. I actually like that answer too because I've heard it too. I've heard, especially like on apps like TikTok. Oh, well, this person would be better suited, and it's like if you haven't done the work, I mean, you really shouldn't be anybody's parent, let alone interracial adoption. So start there.
I agree. I agree.
Um, as a training and content development specialist at Case, which by the way, that's how I met Tony through Case and Alonzo, who I interviewed a couple of months ago. He's actually using services from Case. Yeah, I was like, I interned there. He was like, what? I was like, yeah. Um, you create programs that help professionals understand adoptees more in a holistic lens. Can you share an example of a training or concept that's been especially impactful?
One that I would like to start off with, that I would also love to invite Alonzo to, is the adult adoptee support group that I facilitate. I started that group 2 years ago, and we have adoptees of all ages from all different types of places in the United States, and some even from outside of the US who've joined our group. And it's just been a really great space for adoptees to share how they're feeling in adulthood. We've had adoptees in the group say that they've gone to therapy as a result of the group. We have adoptees who said that they've started their search for their birth families as a result of the group. We have adoptees who shared that they've had difficult conversations with their significant others or their adoptive families, or have disconnected in ways that have felt affirming, or reunited with other people. So I think that doing that group has just felt really good for me. I facilitated with Rachel Schifferar, who's a content development specialist at Case, who's an interracial adoptee herself. And so I feel that we've done a really nice job of cultivating that space. And so I'm proud of that group. I also facilitate an interracial adoptive parent support group too, which has also been nice to do. And I also facilitate an LGBTQ plus parent support group as well, a Case, which is another group that I'm also proud of. And I do trainings that I feel speak to my experiences, but trainings that I also think are really important
Mhm.
for the adoptive foster kinship community to be engaged with. And I try as much as I can to give voice to adult adoptees. So I've started the Adult Adoptee Author Series at Case, where I interview adoptees who are authors about their books, and they share about their books. I've had some really, really wonderful authors, really wonderful books, really impactful stories, narratives, children's books, guides, poetry, research that's all been encompassed in the author series that I've done. And I've seen with the clinicians that I've worked with in training, because I train a lot of clinicians, train a lot of therapists to become wiser in adoption stuff.
Yeah.
And so I teach them about how to do that. And we have a curriculum in Case that teaches them also how to do that. And they have come back and have also talked about how helpful and impactful those services have been for them. Sometimes how helpful I have been to them as well. And so I'm really honored to be able to touch lives in that way. And I know that what I do isn't always a process that you see right away, that you see changing right away. I know that sometimes something that I do now won't be felt by a family member until maybe 25 years from now. But knowing that hopefully I'm in some way that spark for them is something that I hold dear as well. And so I'm happy with the work generally that the case does with regard to honoring lived experience voices, and proud of the work that we do a Case in general. And I've liked my positionality and how I've been able to kind of create what I would like to see happen in this space. You didn't
I
literally
get when
freeze.
these things aren't live and I can, like, break out and, like, have conversations. I'm like it's like I'm Wendy Williams in her purple chair or something. I appreciate what you said about, the work that you're doing today. You may not see the changes until maybe 25 years from now, and I think that's very important in any space where you're an advocate, where, um, you are doing impactful work and you may be getting frustrated, you're not seeing the change now. You kinda need to prepare yourself to kinda go this is like a long game. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, as people say. So, you may not see the changes that you implemented, 2 years from now. It may take a decade, it may take longer than that, but to anyone who is doing this type of work, advocacy work, just know the things that you're doing today do matter and do make a change. That's something I see with people, they become frustrated, especially with the state of this country right now. I know there are a lot of boots on the ground, they're doing that work. A lot of people don't see it, maybe it's not on social media, maybe it's just not popping, but people are doing work, are trying to make this country a better place, so I just wanted to say that.
No, you're
And
right.
yeah, I think I went through that similar process too, where it's like, "I'm not seeing, like, my changes, da da da." Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Next question. How do you take care of yourself while doing such emotionally charged advocacy work?
Sometimes I have a glass of wine, you know? Other times I listen to music. Other times I share in community spaces with other adoptee professionals who are doing this work in a professional space where we can kind of talk shop and share how we're feeling about being adoptees that are doing this work. And other times I try to just take a break and disengage and do something else for a little while. I don't feel burned out though from the work at this time. I feel really still energized about what I'm doing, and I try to engage in self-care, and I try to be intentional about doing that. And I try to ask other people what they do for self-care so I can get some ideas, maybe something that I'm not doing yet that I can start doing that might be helpful for me in the future. So I think that as I continue to engage in this space, that's going to be increasingly important for me as I continue to dig my heels in into these sometimes really fraught conversations and topics. So I don't want to try to make it seem like it's so easy and that I have it all figured out. I definitely want to continue to try to get better and to continue to engage in these community spaces that give back to me and feed me, just like I hope I'm also feeding them.
Finally, if you could give one message to adoptees listening to this episode, what would it be?
Claim your belonging. You are deserving of love. You are deserving of relationship. You are deserving of a sense of felt safety. You are deserving of a sense of authenticity in all of your identities. Claim that for yourself because you are worthy and you will continue to be worthy, and no one can take that away from you is what I would tell adoptees out there. And find your community spaces that you feel bring you that hope, bring you that belonging, even if it means disengaging from places that you don't feel are giving you that currently.
You ate with that one. Uh,
Okay.
So I have some fun questions. I used to call this segment rapid fire questions. I'm still working on the name. I know. I'm working on the name.
I don't
But
mind
these
that.
are just fun questions. Some are hypothetical. That's like my specialty right there. The first one is what is your well, that's not hypothetical. Okay. What's your favorite soccer memory playing or watching?
That's a good one. No one's asked me that before. Favorite soccer memory? Ooh, probably going to Portugal and playing soccer in Portugal is my favorite soccer memory. I was able to do that when I was 23, and I was playing with guys who were playing like varsity at their colleges, and we were playing against professional teams in Portugal, just like exhibition games and stuff where we could basically see how good we were. And so I was able to kind of entrain and live out my soccer dreams for those few weeks there that I was in Portugal and experience Portugal as as a country and Lisbon as a city. And so that time was really magical soccer wise and in general. So that was probably my favorite soccer related memory. And then I just have some goals that I've scored that I remember that are gonna sound cliche and very prideful if I go into detail about them. But those are the good memories, scoring some of those goals that I scored too. Those are fun.
Yeah, at first I was gonna call it football because I know that's the proper term. But for the purposes of people who are listening, that's not work.
Soccer's cool for our listeners for certain.
Have you ever I've seen in movies where they kick and the ball goes into the goal, but they flip. Have you ever done one of those?
No, no,
Okay.
that's my worst fear of being asked that question. No, I'm playing. No, I haven't done that. I've seen that, and I don't know if you follow Speed, but I've seen he's a influencer who's on like stream for the youth, but
Mhm.
he's really involved in sports and stuff, and so he can do stuff like that. He's when he scores, he flips and does all the cool stuff. I wish I could do that, but no, I've not done that yet.
Well, you can only dream. If you could play any position on the field, what would it be?
If I could play any position on the soccer field, I'd say probably All of them, honestly. I know it's a cop out. If I was forced to choose, I'd probably right now where I am in my life, in my athletic ability, I would say forward because I feel like forward, you get all the glory, but you don't have to do as much work as a soccer player. And soccer players that might be listening know what I'm talking about. But my natural position is a midfielder, which is running up and down. Basically, just I run all game. I run all the time. That's my job: run, kick, defend. But forward is fun because you can just get the ball a few times a game and you can be the hero and you don't have to worry about defending or anything like that. And so it doesn't require as much stamina. And so I don't have as much stamina as I used to. So I think right now where I'm at, probably forward.
Okay. If you weren't doing this work, what other career would you see yourself in?
If I wasn't doing this work, I think it's very likely that it's hard. One, it's hard for me to not see myself doing this work, and that I think is a testament to how passionate I am about it. It just feels like this is part of who I am is speaking about adoption. And for me, fortunately, that's also been able to pay my bills and stuff, but I like speaking about it. So I hope to be able to continue doing it. If I weren't doing it, I would probably be doing a couple things. One is I think I'd be a writer. And if I wasn't writing about adoption, I think I'd be writing about, I've always wanted to write a fiction book. It's a story, a fictional story and tale. So I would be a novelist and that'd be interesting. Before I was doing this adoption work, I was a teacher for kids with special needs. And so I was thinking about studying to get my master's. And I have my Ph.D. in sociology, but I was thinking about getting my master's in as a BCBA, which would allow me to supervise people working with kids with autism as well. Because I was what they call registered behavior technician already. And I was thinking about doing that as a career kind of path for myself. And so, and I was a teacher for a few years at a school for kids with special needs. So I can also see myself maybe doing that. But if you ask me like what would I want to do if I just like were able to choose my passion, it'd be sitting in like a peach tree writing fiction book somewhere like in a tropical place. And that for me is probably what I would be doing.
Horror fiction, right?
No horror fiction, probably for me. Maybe like a inside story. Maybe it would be like he's watching a horror movie and
Right.
talking to a girl who loves horror, you know?
Ah, we were watching Scream on the couch, and da, da, da.
Right.
What's the first concert you ever attended?
Dang. Wow. That's a fun one. 'Cause I love concerts. The first concert I ever attended, I think I'm gonna say it was either T-Pain or Lupe Fiasco, I think.
Those are good. Oh, wow.
Are the first 2. I don't remember which one came first. They were both in my freshman year of college, and I remember T-Pain, and you can track my age now, but T-Pain was a really popular artist, when I was in college, and then Lupe Fiasco, I was a huge fan of. I still am, too. So those were the first couple concerts I went to, but if I could talk about concerts for a split second, like I said, I love music. So concert wise, I was also able to go to a Childish Gambino concert when he was not known for his music at all. And when people didn't
Nice.
even know he made music yet,
Uh,
really. And he was just the guy from Community, his show at the time. So that was cool seeing that. I saw Kendrick Lamar at a 300 person venue when Kendrick had just before Good Kid, Mad City had come out, actually. I saw Kendrick Lamar in concert, and then I saw him again when he came out with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and then I saw him again last year, actually, or this year. I saw him this year for his GNX tour this year. So it's been cool to see like the evolution as an artist, but also as a performer too.
yeah.
So, but yeah, T-Pain, Lupe, those were the first 2 concerts I believe that I went to, both really good shows.
Which album was this for Lupe?
This was the cool.
That's my
This
favorite.
was the
That's
cool.
my favorite
And
from
mine
him.
too.
I had it on repeat on that iPod Nano.
It was in between the cool and lasers, like,
Okay.
at that time. It was yeah. It was but it was shortly after the cool had come out. It was yeah, that I had that album on repeat too. That was my favorite album of the time. So I listened to it back to front and I had these Facebook this is when I was putting corny Facebook quotes up on my Facebook and I had her eyes glow green with the logo of our dreams, an obscene obsession for the cream, which is a Lupe Fiasco quote from the song The Coolest, which I quoted like 5 or 6 times in different months on my Facebook. Obviously, I had nothing else to put up there. Yeah, I was definitely a huge Cool fan and a Lupe fan. He was my favorite rapper of that particular time.
That was a good album. I wish I was like when people talk about their experience, especially like seeing Kendrick when it's just 300 people, it's like, dang, you were there at the beginning, you were listening to mixtapes and things like that. And yeah, I wanted to go to GNX, but I think like by the time I saw those tickets, I was like, I got GNX at home. You know what I mean? But yeah, wow, that's so cool. Clearly the coolest. French toast, pancakes, or waffles?
French toast.
That was quick. Okay,
French toast, yeah, easy.
French toast. What was your first job?
My first paid job
Yes.
my first paid job was reffing soccer, yeah.
So you had the whistle and everything?
Yeah, I had the whole outfit, whistle,
Foot
y
Locker
the
aesthetic.
yellow Foot Locker aesthetic, the pants, I had the cards with me, literally.
You'd
Yes,
be like,
literal.
"Flag on a" is
Yep.
that how you say it?
You that is the American football, but yes, for the American, for the soccer, or um, you would say yellow or red, like red card or yellow card. So yellow is a warning, basically. If you get 2 yellows, you get a red, and a red is you get thrown out of the game, and you can get a straight red. If you do something crazy, you can get a straight red card. So sometimes, once in a while, as a ref, you have to, you have to do that. But that was my first, probably, yeah. I think that was my first paid.
Strict,
Yeah.
very strict. Last question, if you could bring one mythical creature to life, what would you choose and
Probably bring back Mufasa because I'm not over that death.
No, that death was traumatic.
Yeah.
That was traumatic for a kids movie.
Spoiler, I guess, if there's anyone who hasn't seen The Lion King.
At
I
this
don't know
point,
what I don't know what you're doing with yourself if you haven't seen The Lion King. But yeah, that death is even to this day, if I watch The Lion King, like, no. Oh yeah,
that
I'd bring back and the kingdom would have been so much different, So
I know, but that's why you gotta watch your ops, cause that's what Scar was.
that's true. He really was. He was hating. He was hating
Yeah.
their whole life. I mean,
Yeah.
Harry Potter wise, Sirius Black, if you could bring Sirius Black back, that would be great. Sirius Black back. That would be phenomenal. He was a great character and the movies didn't do him justice if you just
No.
watch the movies. The books, you need to read the books to see how great of a character he really was. Like he was awesome.
I do. I just have this thing, like, if I've already seen the movie, good luck, but you know what? I should probably challenge myself to read at least one because I was Twilight down. Like, I seen the first movie and I started reading the books after that. So I definitely will try to give it a try, and I'll get it on, like get it from the library or something because we not trying to support financially
Yeah.
if
I
you're
mean, you can
relevant.
listen do you listen to audiobooks?
I do. I actually started that years ago because I wanted to finish a series of unfortunate events. I didn't get
Yeah,
to
I
read the
love that.
14th book, so I was like, "I'll just listen to it." Bummed me out because I was like, so their parents are really dead. Cool."
I know. I know. You thought they would find them. I mean, it is called a series of unfortunate events, but it still felt like we were building to
Yeah.
them being alive.
I was like, "Do they experience any sort of relief at any point?" No.
For moments, for like 2 days, like every
They have
book
each
for like
other.
2 days.
But yeah, I definitely will check out audiobooks 'cause I'm pretty sure there's some on YouTube at this point.
There have to be, right? I mean, Yeah, you'll love the books. They're awesome. The movies, so do you have a favorite movie out of the movies you've seen?
I will always love Chamber of Secrets. What, uh, Prisoner of Azkaban, because I feel like it started to shift and get dark, and I like that.
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Started to make things more complex, and yeah. Were we introduced to series?
We were
It was
in
like
the
a short.
third book, or in the third
Okay,
movie, yeah. The Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius is imprisoned, and yeah, so it was the third one.
yeah. What's your favorite?
Chamber of Secrets is really great. That's probably the one I've seen the most.
Yeah.
Probably my, like, comfort Harry Potter movie, and then I really like the 4th one, the Goblet of Fire,
Yes.
the Triwizard Tournament, because I like the pageantry of that one.
Yeah.
That was really cool, and I really like the 6th movie too, even though
Mhm.
Dumbledore dies in the 6th movie. It's tough. That was tough, you know?
I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, I know,
And the way
and
he fell, I was
it's
like, "Oh
like
my god."
with the slow-mo and the
Yeah, the
zoom
slow-mo,
in
his
on
hair
that
was just in the
face, like,
wind,
right, looking luscious, like,
looking
"Damn,
luscious.
damn,
I was
Dumbledore."
pissed. I understand why things need to happen and ugh. And also, I felt like Snape is a confusing character for me because I'm like, "Do you like Harry or do you not like, what's the vibe?" I'm like, "I know you like his mom, but
I don't think he likes Harry. I think he's just like,
you
"I love your
tolerate."
mom, yeah, so I gotta tolerate you because I know your mom might mess with me.
In the
If I
afterlife.
die in the afterlife, your mom might mess with me, so I gotta, tolerate you, I guess, but I hate your guts, for real."
And I'm like, Harry was not it wasn't like he was annoying or anything, like, he never did anything, so I just never understood it.
It's like Harry exists, his state basically is just like, "Shut up,"
Like, I
like,
hate you.
that's "I hate you." That's kind of how I feel like Snape gets down. But he was a really complex character though, and I did really love his character and the actor who played R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Rickman who plays Snape. Yeah, those are yeah, the 7th movie I like too. The 2nd part of the first part was boring. It was boring. The first one was boring. I was like, "That's it?" Like, because
Get
I've
to
read
the
this
action.
get to action. Like, I've read the 7th book, so where they cut it off was just kinda weird to me, but whatever. The 2nd part though, that 7th movie or 8th movie, I guess you
Yeah.
could say. I really do enjoy that one. Yeah, so I mean, those are my Harry Potter kind of movies, and I do like those types of stories and movies. Like I did watch the Lord of the Rings movies when they were out. I didn't read the books because that was a lot for me. The Hobbit, that was even for me. That was a lot. Well, I had a friend who read those books.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't do it, but I did watch the movies. It took me 80 years to finish the last movie. It's like it's still on, but yeah, I like those, and I like other kind of as far as like new stuff that's show wise. Like I do like Stranger Things,
Same.
and I'm looking forward to the last season of that. I just saw today that the season finale of Stranger Things are gonna show it in theaters, and so it's gonna be available for people yeah to watch in theaters. So I think that'll be interesting for people to see.
Look, don't get me to having a watch party, okay?
Hey,
I know a couple of people. I mean, they've, had their it's been 2 years since the last season? Or
yeah,
1?
yeah,
Okay,
it's been
2
two,
years.
yeah.
Ridiculous, but they better make it count.
I know. Better be 2-hour episodes
Yeah,
every episode.
I want a movie every
Yeah,
episode.
every episode. And don't go out like Game of Thrones. Like, don't go out like that. Give us a good ending. Do not
I
disappoint
tried to
me.
get into Game of Thrones.
It's cool.
I think I have a line with incest. I can't. The last episode I saw was when they kicked that little boy out the window after the brother and the sister with it. I was
Oh, that
like
was the first episode of this whole show. That was the first episode. You were like, nah, I'm good.
and then they tried to kill him in his sleep while he was, sick. I'm like, "I can't. I can't."
It
But
doesn't
yeah,
get
I've
like
heard
better incest wise. So I feel
Who?
you. It doesn't get better incest-wise, like, it gets worse.
Wow, they
Yeah.
just keep it going.
Yeah, yeah, it continues. Yeah.
Historically
Yeah.
accurate, I guess, but, you know,
Yeah, no, but yeah, the bubonic plague, that would've been historically accurate to show. I don't there's some things you could still not wanna see, so I definitely I feel you.
I can't. Well, do you have any church announcements? Where can people find you? Do you have any upcoming events or trainings that you would like to pull the audience to?
Sure, sure, I have a training October actually when does this come out? Actually, I should say that because I don't wanna say it.
I'm gonna release this episode, probably like the 2nd or 3rd week of November.
So I have a training on December the 4th with Carlos Dillard, who's my next author from the Adoptee author series. He's an adoptee who experienced the foster care system. He has a book out called Ward of the State. So that'll be my next adoptee author series. You can follow him on TikTok and also on Instagram. You can follow the CASE, it's adoptionsupport.org website for trainings and events. We have another event on November the 20th, which is a Strengthening Your Family series event, which we have monthly. It's free for the first 600 registrants. I'll be talking about search and reunion with some therapists that we have at CASE. And I'm always doing trainings here and there, so be on the lookout. You can follow me on Instagram, Tony underscore HY. That's my Instagram. You can email me if you would like to at Hynes, that's HYNES at adoptionsupport. You can pick up my book, The Son with Two Moms, on Amazon. And I'm also putting out another book next year. So be on the lookout for that one when it comes out too.
And we will. Thank you so much, Tony, for your time and for sharing your story. And yeah, I think this is very impactful. And whoever's listening, I hope that you were able to gain some insight, whether it's your situation or someone you know or someone you love. And yeah, we'll see you guys next episode.
See you next time. Thanks so much, Red. Appreciate you.